the story of Nigeria has different faces. Of course, power is a major driver, Nigeria's economy. And we recorded a modest growth of 2.51%, talking about the GDP. I'm sure by now the number is everywhere. Second quarter of 2023 at the National Bureau of Statistics. Last week they were really busy. Remember that employment, we had the Statistician General speak with us on Friday about the employment data. Later on, they did release the GDP later on Friday. And we saw a little bit of growth there, but analysts are telling us not to get too excited. One of those economists that have told us to manage our excitement is Dr. Muda Yusuf. You know him, he's the Chief Executive Officer for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, and he joins us here in the studio. Good to have you, Dr. Yusuf. Good morning.
Thank you, Eni. Good morning.
So, I mean, the general projection for this year is about 3%. Does it look like we're going there? We're already in August now. This is for the second quarter.
Well, the figures so far are not too bad, given the context in which the economy had operated. You know, first we had the challenges of the elections, the distractions, the uncertainty that came with the elections in the first quarter, and also to some extent even in the second quarter. Then following the reforms that we had some very significant shocks on the economy. So if in spite of all of that, we posted a growth rate of 2.51%, I think it's not bad. Mm-hmm. It's slightly better, I think about 20 basis points better than what we had in the first quarter of this year. Mm. So it's still generally okay. Mm. The average for Sub-Saharan Africa is about 3.1. And what we are seeing even in the advanced economies is even much less. Mm. You know, the forecast for US is about 1.8. The forecast for the Eurozone is about...
That makes it look like we're doing better than the United States.
Well, because we are developing, we still have a lot of room to develop.
For growth.
These are mature economies, so that is why it looks like that. But given the challenges that we have gone through, you know, and yet we are not yet in a negative zone in terms of growth, I think it's still not bad.
Yeah, but that also raises the question. On Friday, we're talking about the employment data. I know you've seen it, that unemployment now is 4.1%. And because the NBS has adopted the new methodology for measuring data, because it's a global practice. And people ask how real do they really reflect these numbers, this data that the NBS releases? Do they really reflect the reality, our reality? I guess this also, you tell the man on the street, oh, the economy grew 2.51%. I'm like, so what's my business? Mm-hmm. Where does it concern me? How do I feel it? You know, so again, the connection of data and the reality.
Yes, it is important. That is why in economics we talk about a growth that is inclusive. You see, otherwise, some of these figures will just sound academic, just as you have said, just as you have with the unemployment data. Those figures may sound academic if there is no impact, you know. But, you know, you need the growth and all of these figures as the basic foundation, you know, upon which you can now build some other things that will, you know, improve the economy. Because there's a relationship between the GDP performance and also investment. There's a relationship between investment and employment. There's a relation between employment and poverty reduction and all of that. But having said all of that, it is one thing to have the economy performing. It is also another thing to specifically address the social issues, the welfare concerns, you know. So you can be having an economy that is growing, and you can also be having at the same time people getting poorer. You know, that is not the kind of economy we like to see. So that is why it is important to underscore the importance of inclusiveness in the growth of an economy. Okay. So that is very important.
All right. So let's look at the GDP growth in details. Yeah. Because I think you are one of those who has told us, even though we have seen a growth, we should not be so happy. We see sectors like the quarry and minerals. We see them grow. I guess this, Mr. Lake, we just have to build on this. The Minister of Solid Minerals, we saw it up about 39%. That's huge. But how much of that goes into the official pocket, the government pocket?
Well, that is one issue about the solid mineral sector. But the good thing now is that there's a whole lot of interest in that sector, given what is happening, especially around these electric vehicles, batteries, and so on.
And we have a lot of those raw materials.
We have a lot of them in Nigeria. So there's a whole lot of interest in that sector now, in addition to this quarry, which is related in a way to the construction industry as well. So the two together are showing a whole lot of promise from what the figures have shown. But again, I take the point, there's a whole lot of illegal mining, artisanal mining as they call it. Some of these things are not being properly captured, and I've seen that there's a whole lot of efforts, to mainstream these artisanal miners into the mainstream of the mining sector and also into the mainstream of the, the formal economy. Some states are taking steps, and even I remember at the time of, Fayemi, Governor Fayemi, when he was the Minister of Solid Minerals, he took some deliberate steps, to bring in this illegal miners.
I know they talked a lot about mapping at that time, finding out what is where, but I didn't really get the result of it.
No, they have done a lot. It's geological mapping, and that is to support investors. Because for you to begin to invest in mining and beginning to commit resources to particular locations, you must have some geological information. So that is the support that the government is bringing to that sector.
So can we say it's a result of that, is that attempt or that effort, the mapping and all of that attention? Is that why we see this?
No, it's a combination of both. It's a combination of the increasing global opportunities for solid minerals. It's expanding because of all this energy transition thing. So the demand for some of these minerals are growing. And that, of course, is also complemented by the efforts of governments to improve geological information as to what is where, in what quantities, and so on. Because you need that to minimize the risk of investment. Because it's a also very highly risky sector.
Yes, it
and
is.
It's also very
it's highly undeveloped.
It's undeveloped
in our part of the world.
And it's capital intensive as well. So there's a whole lot that needs to be done.
Well, I have a worry. I mean, we see growth in manufacturing, we see in food and beverages and agriculture, but the growth are so minimal. I mean, for instance, manufacturing is just 2.2%, food and beverages 4%, agriculture 1.5%. And these are areas that, we have a lot of potentials that have not yet been tapped.
Yes, the thing is that the headwinds are enormous, particularly when you look at the real sector of the economy. When you look at manufacturing now, you can imagine, you have stories of, companies that have left and so on, and they are still grappling with a whole lot of issues. A whole lot of legacy issues around infrastructure, power, financing, FX, the ports. Those problems are still there. Unfortunately, we have an industrial sector that is also highly import dependent. That makes it even worse. It makes them a lot more vulnerable, to external shocks, particularly to the foreign exchange shocks. Because if we talk to them, the two biggest issues facing Nigerian manufacturing is foreign exchange and energy.
Yeah, we saw the Minister of Power there. He was in Oyo State promising that within 6 months and 1 year, Nigerians will see an improved. And I know a lot of Nigerians will be like, we've heard this so many times.
We've heard this.
We cannot put our hope on this. I don't know what he would do differently to convince Nigerians.
No. We have had that kind of story several times over. So we cannot depend on that. I think we should relate a lot more to what is done and how we see the outcomes. It is the outcomes that matter. We have gone past through the era of campaigns or telling us about what you want to do.
You don't think we can be patient for 6 months and see perhaps Mr. Adilabu is different?
No, 6 months is a short time. When you are talking about fixing power, If you can really achieve results, that would be great.
Yeah, and you know, now there are more avenues. You have the transition, clean energy now more on the table. People are looking at the alternative, not just waiting for, you know, the one that comes from the national grid. We have a new law guiding power supply and generation. States now have. So there are more opportunities now that should make it easier.
Yes, it's good for the diversification within the sector. It's good for the decentralization of the power sector. It's also good for, you know, private sector investment. But what we are yet to see are government policies to drive it. It is not enough to put the law on the table that, okay, it's now diversified, it's now decentralized. What fiscal policies have we put in place? What incentives have you announced to encourage more people to go into renewables, into all this embedded power and all of that? We are here to see that. I'm hoping that the Taiwo Daily Committee will come with it, because there's a whole lot that can happen with fiscal incentives to drive investment. You can achieve a whole lot of results. That will even give you more results than all these palliatives and all these intervention funds. If the tariffs, incentives are very good for those who want to invest in the power sector, that would be great. If monetary policy concessions are also good for those who are in the power sector, that would be great. If tax policies, tax incentives are announced, that over if you are going to power sector investment, if you are going to refinery and all of this, these are the tax incentives we are rolling out. These are the tariff incentives we are rolling out. We are yet to see that. And these are low-hanging fruits as far as driving the recovery of the economy is concerned. So the government needs to work a lot and very quickly too on that side. These are some of the things I'm expecting from Mr. Ayodele. From
He's been a guest many times. He's been expanding and talking about this, so we expect it to come into action now.
It's not just about chasing revenue. It's also about using those policies to give incentives to the private sector to be up and running in those sectors.
All right, still looking at the GDP numbers now, the sectors that contracted. A painful one, of course, would be the road transport. I guess that has a whole lot to do with the subsidy removal.
Yes.
Even, I mean, a lot of times when I was coming to work, I noticed that the road is not as busy as it used to be. So I guess this is just the reality. More than 50%.
Yes. Well, that, I think, is the biggest contraction that we saw.
And this translates to economic activities, not just people walking around or driving around.
Of course. I mean, the road transport economy is a very huge economy. It's not just about those who are driving. It's not just about those who are in commercial transportation. It's also about those who are feeding the sector. Look at the artisans, for instance. I was speaking to a organizer the other day. He said that the patronage has dropped. I said, why? He said, not many cars are on the road anymore. So you don't have tire punctures and all of that. It's affected even at that level. The same thing with all these mechanics, the wires and all of that. Even those who are in the petroleum downstream, their margin may have improved, but their turnover has dropped because the sales of fuel has also dropped. So there's a whole lot of economy around road transportation, you know, and all of this is affecting a whole lot of them. So it's not surprising that we had that kind of very serious drop in...
coal mining also down 15%.
Yes.
Motor vehicle assembly, I don't think we've been that good at that.
We have not been that good, but, you know, there was a time, at least some of the government agencies had a policy, even the government itself had a policy of patronage of some of these vehicles that are locally produced. But again, the challenge with that sector is that it's also heavily import-dependent.
Like everything is imported.
Everything is imported.
Yeah.
I mean, the beauty of manufacturing is for us to be able to localize a lot of the inputs that we use. That way, you bring down costs, you reduce import dependence, and you're also able to generate a lot of multiplier effects for the economy. So I'm hoping that we'll go very quickly in that direction.
The music and motion pictures, when I saw that's contracted, that could be worrying because that's one of our strengths at this time.
Yeah, a very slight contraction though. But again, you know, when the economy is going through the kind of things we are going through, particularly in the first quarter and the second quarter, it affects practically every sector, because this is about entertainment and all of that. But when people are struggling to feed, when they are struggling to pay school fees, when they are struggling
to buy petrol,
some of those things get relegated in terms of demand. And quite a number of products have been affected. Because it's after you have eaten, you have paid school fees, that is when you remember some other sectors. So many sectors have been affected because of the declining purchasing power and the weak disposable income. As a result of, reordering of spending priorities that the citizens are taking now.
I think every home has had to do that.
Of course. It's a very challenging period. It's a very challenging
But the most scary one is our backbone in the country, where the sectors in recession, we have oil refining down 35.6, crude, petroleum and gas down 13. And of course, we have the livestock and textile. But I mean, the oil part
is very disturbing. But the good news is that the government is taking the issues in that sector very seriously.
So a lot of drama, I think, from a Friday over the weekend around.
Yes, the whole apparatus of security. I saw them going to the Niger Delta, visiting all the state governments and all of that. I think the government is committed to ensuring that there is security in that space. We have made some progress in the policy area, especially with the Petroleum Industry Act. But we need to secure the place. We need to ensure that the place inspires enough confidence for investors to go there. And we need to reduce the criminality and the impunity that has characterized the sector over time.
Yeah,
so if we're able to do that, I think we'll be getting somewhere.
We're talking about impunity there. A lot of fingers point to, the other one that they saw with the Navy, that there was a Navy also involved. And, a lot of stories that we cannot really prove. But, I mean, when you ask the question, a vessel as big as it is, how can it be on the waters? And the regulators, Navy and all of that cannot see it, or do not question its destination, its papers, and all of that, raises a whole lot of concerns that perhaps we should look inside us if we really want to solve this issue of oil theft.
Exactly, and that is what the government needs to do. There's a lot of, connivance among the security agencies. I remember the GMD of NNPC at that time also said that. He said that much. There are quite a number of people, even within the security agencies, and even within the NNPC, were also involved in it. So I think we need the political will, to make that difference, to bring sanity into that sector. That is very important.
And we really need it, because
that is a life wire. Really.
Yes, and it's the lowest hanging fruit at this time before we go to non-oil export, production, manufacturing. I mean, it's what we can really bank on at this time.
That is what has helped the Middle East countries. They leverage on that, to build their infrastructure, to build industry, to build the aviation sector. The key lever was the oil and gas. And these days, there's a whole lot of opportunities. I mean, look at the oil price, look at the high demand for gas and all of that. So for me, I agree with you. These are low-hanging fruits, which we should move quickly to take advantage of. If we're able to do that, we'll be able to, bring some stability even to the macroeconomic environment. All these FX issues, fiscal issues, and all of that, we'll be able to have a very significant positive impact on them.
All right, we have to stop there for now. Thank you so much, Dr. Muda Yusuf, Chief Executive Officer of the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprises.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you for always being available whenever we need you. We appreciate that.